Today on Crested Butte is Home, I am speaking with Dave Ochs, the Executive Director of the Crested Butte Mountain Bike Association, also known as SIMBA. And Dave's a guy who can talk and talk fast, so listen up, listen carefully. He's got a lot to say, and we're going to talk about SIMBA and everything that they're up to, both this upcoming summer as well as what their vision for the future is. And part of that vision is definitely the Crested Butte Conservation Corps, which is something they started and something we definitely needed here. And it's not entirely mountain biking related because they are doing things like hauling trash out of the woods, and that's something we needed. So this is a great interview, and please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you'd like to listen to your podcasts and leave me a review. I'd love to hear what everyone is thinking about the show, and let's go ahead and get on with the show. All right, welcome to Crested Butte is Home, and today we have Dave Ochs of the Crested Butte Mountain Bike Association, aka SIMBA. So Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, all that good stuff.
All that good stuff. Well, my name is Dave Ochs, David Ochs, as you said. I'm originally from New Jersey. I don't normally say that out loud, but I lived in New Hampshire for a while before I lived here, and that's what kind of turned me on to the outdoors and that lifestyle. And in the winter of 1999-2000, New Hampshire had a huge year. And I'm sorry, I take that back. It was 2000-2001.
Okay.
New Hampshire, Vermont, New England had a huge year. And I got wildly back into snowboarding. And that's actually what brought me out west in 2001. And I moved out here in the May or June summer season of 2001, was snowboarding, which is hilarious. I had no idea even about Crested Butte and its biking potential and what amazing trails and recreation amenities were here, except for, again, the wintertime. And that was it. I mean, literally drove into this town, found it, spent the summer here, fell in love with biking, and that was it.
Found Crested Butte how? Did you have some friends who lived here or what?
Nope.
Or you just looked at a map and you're like...
I heard of Breckenridge, I heard of Aspen, I heard of Vail, I heard of those resorts.
Yeah.
I did hear about Boulder in the sense of I was starting to get into cycling a little bit back in New England. It was actually more about road biking for me. That's what kind of got me started, was a little bit of road biking back there. And I heard of Boulder. Again, I was coming out to Colorado to see the West. I'd never been out West before. I got myself a Golden Eagle pass for the parks and went right to South Dakota and did, actually I was in Wyoming first, right? That actually... I'll forget the order, but I did Devil's Thumb, did the Badlands, went to Glacier, went through all the parks in, obviously went to Yellowstone, went through Dinosaur in Utah and stuff like that, and came around Utah and then came through Colorado. And my route when I came through Colorado National Monument, again using the pass, was to go through Gunnison, and I saw Aspen. So I was that guy looking at a map like, if I go to this town in Crested Butte, I could probably just drive to Aspen. And sure enough, I drove through Crested Butte at the end of May, and literally, I mean, it's that almost iconic story of that first time driving down the hill. It was like, oh my gosh, I mean, like the sirens went off and the heavenly music. I'm like, what is this amazing town? And that's it. That's how I found Crested Butte.
And did you immediately just start trying to find a place to live, or were you...
Almost immediately. I spent 5 days up in Rustler's Gulch. I lived up there. I camped for 5 days. I did eventually drive around. I didn't try and take the punch bowl or anything silly like the directions would have told you.
MapQuest, just go over here.
Just go and take your 88 Honda Civic over to Aspen, over the punch bowl. So it was just me, the truck, and the dog. Drove around, did go to Aspen, did go to Breckenridge, did go to Vail because I'd heard of them. I wanted to see them. And everything I was trying to leave on the East Coast was at those resorts, including Boulder. Stoplights, bustling, cosmopolitan cities almost. And it was like, this is not what I was looking for. And again, not even knowing what I was looking for in Crested Butte, I luckily stumbled upon it, drove right back here, took a couple more days out in Gothic, and then found a place to live, and that was it.
Been here ever since. Awesome. All right, changing subject. What's up with the pork chop sideburns? Is that like a Bob Roll infatuation?
Nope, it's a compromise.
It's a compromise between...
I've always been a big facial hair guy. I'm losing the hair everywhere else. I grow it where I can.
Yeah.
And I used to have a big old beard, and the wife. It was all about the wife. And it was the wintertime. She didn't like, after even a good powder day, right? We'd get on the bus, I'd go to give her a kiss, and there'd be those frothy ice boogies hanging down. So literally, it was like if I cut out the center line, I can still get a little with the misses.
Yeah.
Still don't have to do the full shaving, which is a waste of time. Right?
I hear you. I've tried to go with the goatee, and I definitely get shot down on that. That's not allowed. Biking, mountain biking, have you always loved it? Even when you were 6 years old, were you like, this is something I need to do?
No, and it's funny. I mean, it's ironic. I should look back in history of when I've had your first trek mountain bike, and it was a trek, and I was 14, and I was in New Jersey, and my friends and I would go ride the trails. Yeah. But that had nothing to do with that. Didn't really even do much to me except for a memory. As much as, again, when I lived in New Hampshire, I started getting into the outdoors in every season, and that's what kind of got me going. Was, again, not realizing early on I was not New Jersey. I just didn't fit there. It seemed like in New Hampshire I kind of got into mountain biking, and like I said, I kind of got into road biking a little bit too. That was the first year of Lance Armstrong, in 90 won the tour, and it kind of excited a bunch of people too. And then when I moved here, I moved here with a snowboard problem. I moved here to snowboard and developed a bicycle problem that summer. I've never experienced something like that in my life. I had no idea it existed. And when I first came here and experienced these trails in the summertime in Crested Butte, that was it. I developed a huge credit card problem, bought a Moots that winter. It went to hell quick, Started developing major credit issues over buying different bikes, and it's been downhill ever since.
And that's led you to your current job, which is... what's your title, actually? Executive Director? Executive Director of SIMBA, aka Crested Butte Mountain Bike Association. So tell us about that job and how you got into that.
Kind of where I came from, I guess, a little bit was my family has always been about giving back and stuff like that, and I've always kind of felt that way too. So something I'm very I cherish a lot from my family, my upbringing. And when I moved here, I realized that. And when I came here, and again, like I said, I just fell in love with mountain biking and the trails in this community. And part of it was the very first day. So I moved into my place on Cypress Avenue on June 1. And it was the very first, it was either June 2nd or June 3rd that year. I should look it up and verify. But it was National Trails Day. Uh-huh. And that year, 2001, is when Tony's was put in. So my roommates at the time, who I'd never met until I moved into this place, were like, hey, let's go do this Trails, Crested Butte Mountain Bike Association, SIMBA Trail Workday. So I was like, let's go, dude. Everything about this community was mesmerizing. And sure enough, I went to that trail work day after living here for 2 or 3 days, or living in town for 2 days.
Awesome.
And we built Tony's. And that was literally a religious experience for me. It was like I've never felt that kind of sense of community, and just to see what, I don't know what the numbers were that year, how many people showed up to build that trail, but Tony's is a lifeline. It's an artery for all of our trails here. And again, that day had a very special impact on my life, and that's what got me involved with SIMBA. And by 2003, I was a board member. So I was a board member for 13 years before I was hired. And SIMBA's always been a big part of my life. And it's just that. It's the community, it's the trails and the network, and it sucked me in.
That's okay. So I'm gonna skip to a question because you kind of started to go into it. So talk about Crested Butte's involvement with trail building and how it compares to other places. I'm sure you're connected with other executive directors elsewhere, and I'm guessing certainly per capita, we just kind of crush the amount of people that come out and build trail.
Crush it. It's pretty amazing to think about it like that. Is what there's 1,500 people. We could probably do for a new census. But if there's 1,500 people in town, and 200 people show up to work on Lupin, Bud Trail, the Lupins, including Gunsight and stuff like that. It's a massive portion of our community. It's really incredible how many people not only recreate here but want to give back. It's a big part of what this community is all about. The people here are willing to give the shirt off their back for causes, the right people, the right thing. And it's been amazing how to see even, I don't want to say the evolution of it, because ever since I've been here, like that Tony's Trail Work Day, it's just been huge community events, but it's done nothing but grown since I've been here, since 2001. And again, everybody comes out from, the juniors, the 4 or 5, 6-year-olds come out with their family. Yeah. And they don't last long, of course, but you get your youngsters, they come out, and we got mini tools now at SIMBA, and they come out and they do some trail work, all the way up to folks who could barely even lift the tools, but they want to come out and make sure they do something to give back like that. And that stuff it's magic. You can't replace those work days, and that sense of community is amazing stuff that, I look forward to all those work days every year. I wish there were more.
Yeah. No, I've been to a few, and it's definitely amazing how many people are out there and get into it. So we didn't really talk about it. So who is SIMBA? What does SIMBA do? And then lately you've got the Conservation Corps too, and all these other things going on. So what all does it entail?
I think it's pretty multifaceted these days, which is interesting how, again, we've only had paid staff for 2 years, and we keep kind of taking on new things and tagging on more, and some of that's my fault. But again, we've got a pretty eager and egregious board too, which is amazing.
Yeah.
They don't know when to say when. God love these people. But all that aside, I mean, even back in the day, I mean, that's what it was with Simba. With me was, I mean, again, here's people not getting paid for anything. I mean, this is a bunch of people that literally came together out of true just love for our public lands and open space and for trails and recreation, and to see that evolve and grow the way it has been rather amazing. I might have to edit this. What was the question again?
No, you're on. I mean, what's Simba's whole mission and everything else you got going on?
Yeah, so I mean, back in the day for me, especially when I got started, it was the only trails group around. It was focused on mountain biking, but at the same time, Simba was kind of a go-to for just good vibes and a good community group that you could go to get stuff done. And there are some forefathers and some forebears that created Simba that have been around forever and that are still a part of the organization, which is amazing. But a lot of those folks in the beginning were literally there out of, just pure love. It's always been a labor of love. And to see that kind of energy from some of these people and the way it came back every year was just something that I've always wanted to clamber onto, and I did. But in the beginning, it really was about mountain biking in many ways. And I hear the stories about 1983 from the original formation of Simba and how it came together. And again, with the boom of mountain biking, and there were different factions already happening, right?
Really?
Right. You gotta love it. There's people in, Gunnison and Crested Butte were divided in some ways. And I've heard the stories, the Dave Moes and Don Cook and everybody up here and all these different stories. And you had Murdoch in the mix to boot. And again, all these guys kind of came together in 1983 to be like, we're probably better off together and working together. And that was the creation of Simba in 1983, which is amazing. And from there, it has been all about advocacy. And it's kind of amazing to think about the group that does put 150 or 200 people on the ground to get some trail work done. But man, the work that went on in the background, even back in the day when I started, so in the early 2000s, was huge. And it's all about advocacy. And to me, it was about giving back in every sense of it. And that's the way it's always been. I would say in the last, even 10 years, and I got a great chart I should send you of what Simba's accomplished since 2010. It's actually mesmerizing to see what these volunteers have done for that long. Simba's grown even more so really into a bigger picture view of conservation, I would say, stewardship. And again, advocacy is a big part of it. And part of our mission statement, it ends with actually and beyond. And the whole and beyond part is it's not just about Crested Butte either. We believe that mountain bikers and mountain bike rights and recreation rights exist obviously on a national, let alone international level. And it's a big part of what Simba sees itself as, and what Simba's role plays is advocacy in a bigger picture as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'm probably going to come back to that in a little bit. But let's skip to summer 2018. We're recording this in kind of late, I guess it's early spring, really, because the trails are just starting to open. But what are the goals for 2018?
One of the biggest goals is we did hire. I'm sorry. Let me backtrack a tiny bit. One of the biggest emphasis we have this year is on the Crested Butte Conservation Corps. So it's the second year for the CBCC. And the first year was incredibly successful. And I don't want to say we knew that was going to happen, but we knew there was a serious lapse and a serious hole in the backcountry that needed to be filled. Yeah. And we were very proud as a mountain bike group to take on a bigger stewardship role, because that's something that we believe in very much, is we're a conservation group, to take on the CBCC. So for 2018, a big goal that we have for the summer is to really increase the importance, the effectiveness, and the efficiency of the Conservation Corps. So we've hired a supervisor. We're still planning on 2 crews of 3 for the summer. So they're going to cover 6 days a week. So the crews go 3 days each, with 1 day off. The whole point being out there on the ground, in the forest, and on open space, and working with our partners throughout the entire summer. So the majority of time people are here and visiting us. Hopefully they do have an interaction with the Conservation Corps. But that's one of our biggest goals in 2018, is to basically make sure that the Conservation Corps has not just the assets, but the energy and the support that it needs to be as effective as possible. As we know, with everything that's going on, and not just the Rockies, I would say all over the West in general, the infiltration of people and visitors and even folks moving here, because again, quality of life is so good, the impacts are difficult to keep up with, and we hope to stay in front of that curve. That's one of our biggest goals. Another big goal for us this year is we are starting the WWF, which is the women's workforce. Yeah. So we're very excited to try and get more ladies out to our work days. Oftentimes we joke that we've got Baxter's Gulch work days last year would be 30 dudes and one female, and it's
right.
Like we're not doing our job. That being said, we're psyched to kind of get that going, and then we've got a whole bunch of other trail work days we're excited on for Simba on the Simba end of things. Again, that are partnerships with our community, and our first one is National Trails Day this year, June 2nd, and it's rerouting the west end of Deer Creek to get it off of Bill Trampy's private property, and again, put the entire trail completely on public lands, which is probably a better future for it. Same thing with 403, a very popular trail. That's going to be our annual overnight this year at the end of July. And the owner of the start of 403, if you will, where all the kind of unique historical parts of 403 are, is over it. I mean, he's had people trampling, trespassing, and just disrespecting his land for way too long. He's over it. Our whole goal this year is to help him and reroute the beginning of that off his lands, keep it on federal lands, and that way not invade his privacy and his personal holdings.
So the start will be a little farther down the road, I'm assuming then? Or?
If you were to go up Washington Gulch and park at the top, you're going to actually start going down a little bit and go to that next open spot, if you will. Yeah. A little bit wet, so there's some wetlands to mitigate there. But that would be where the trail would take off to get around the private property.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, that'll be fun to check out. And then I'm just going to back up a little bit, but like last year, it's just busy in the summer here, as we all know, but also with the huge winter we had last year, it's a good thing that the Conservation Corps was around, because the trails took a beat down like I personally, I don't think I've ever seen.
It was crazy.
Just because it stayed so wet for so long and people couldn't help themselves and got out probably a little too early, and that's just human nature. But
human nature. Let alone the amount of trees down. I mean, last year the Conservation Corps cut out over 600 trees. That's crazy.
That is crazy for sure. So what are the biggest challenges for Simba? And let's just say, if you had $50 million in the bank, what would you guys do?
If I had $50 million in the bank, what would Simba,
other than paying yourself $50 million?
I'll take just 10. That's cool. What would we do? I would honestly say we would probably reach out to our partners and see where we could work together better, because one of the biggest issues we do have, one of the biggest obstacles for Simba, is the ranching community. And I hardly mean to say that in a negative way, as much as I get it more than anybody. I think a lot of us get it. They were here first. I mean, you could say that about the Utes too.
Sure.
And at the same time, the ranching community was here first. And again, within the last, I would say more so 5 years, granted, the history of mountain biking in the last 30 years, the impacts upon the ranching community and public lands from a recreation point of view is a massive hurdle. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. And I think one of the best things is, for the most part, I think that recreationists do learn and become a part of a bigger picture of stewardship and conservation because of that love of and use of public lands and how amazing they are. But at the same time, there are major issues, and technically we could probably use some funds to help mitigate some of those issues. Yeah. And that could be either land swaps or land purchases, or making sure that the ranching community still has the open lands that they have to do what they do. And again, there's nothing better than maintaining and keeping that open space, but at the same time providing recreation amenities.
Yeah, nice. So that's present day. Let's just jump ahead. So tell me what the trails of Crested Butte look like 10 years from now.
10 years from now, I think the biggest thing that we're looking at Simba would be, number one, safety, connectivity, and a project that we call Riders Off the Road. And a big part of that is, as we all know, sometimes parallel trails are not necessarily liked by agencies. And at the same time, if we can separate users, that's a huge recreational and an experiential improvement, that the fact that you do not have to mix uses, if you will. So again, with growing impacts, with more and more people coming, with razors coming, with different motorized devices, if we can separate users to create better experiences for people, I think we're doing a benefit to our public spaces, our open lands, and our national forest. So our big goal is to create more connectivity by linking up some of the existing trail systems, putting in parallel trails, and creating opportunities for more connectivity with our neighborhoods and our networks, as well as amongst the entire trail network in general.
So is that going to be parallel trails, meaning a trail next to a road, or is there going to be a trail for mountain bikers and hikers versus a trail for dirt bikers right next to each other?
I would say more so a trail for mountain bikers and hikers away from the road.
And dirt bikers then, but potentially
and dirt bikers too. So it's really separating...
single track from road, I guess.
Yes, it's separating motorized from non-motorized.
Except a dirt bike might be in play on some of these too.
Certainly. Okay. And on some of them, yes. And at the same time, the dirt bikes can also use the road.
Right.
So there's the road access while separating that non-motorized use. We saw Jason Stubbe, great example, 2012, 2013, head-on collision on Cement Creek Road with the motorcycle. And again, nobody was at fault. Nobody did anything wrong. I'll be honest, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more. If you come off of a long ride out Cement Creek up in the upper part of the drainage off Crystal Peak or Hunter Creek Trail, or come down Waterfall, when you hit the road, now you're bombing down the road at 35 miles an hour on a mountain bike.
Sure.
A motorcycle, a razor, a car, anybody could be going up the road at the same speed. And again, everyone's cutting corners and having fun. And God, we could have major disasters out there. I'm surprised there haven't been more. If there was a parallel trail and single track on the side of the road, that would create a better, obviously, access and user experience for that user, but separate the two users. I think we'd have a better recreation picture as a whole, looking from the 30,000-foot view down, that we'd all enjoy and, again, have a better experience on our public lands.
Yep. On today's Crested Butte Real Estate Minute, I thought I'd talk about some of the different areas where you could live and have great opportunities to ride your bike right outside your door. So one of those would definitely be Mount Crested Butte. The riding up at the ski area is so good for those quick after-work rides, so that's way up there on my list. Town, of course, you can just cruise up the rec path and get up there too, or use the upper or lower loop systems. And going further down valley, Crested Butte South, that is a great base camp for the big all-day rides. And don't want to forget about Gunnison. Signal Peak is easily accessible to everyone in Gunnison, and really Hartman Rocks is too. So anyway, my name is Frank Consella, and if you have any questions about Crested Butte real estate and where some good places to live might be, please give me a shout. My website is crestedbutterealestateagent.com. My contact info is there. Just give me a shout. I'd love to talk to you, and let's get back to the interview. So there is a revision process going on right now with what is called GMOD, which stands for Grand Mesa, Uncompahgre, and Gunnison National Forests. So tell us what that process is, and open your beer. Nice. And tell us about some of his involvement with the GMOD revision process and how you hope it goes and that kind of thing.
Sure. I'm really excited about it. Number one, we have the oldest forest plan in the entire country, which is kind of cool. It's kind of like the Walmart in Gunnison, which is the smallest Walmart in the entire United States. Again, certain things to be proud of in some regards.
Sure.
But again, excited to be revising the forest plan in the sense of, things are changing. That's the bottom line. Impacts are changing. People are coming. There are things that are happening on the forest that did not happen in the early 1980s when the last forest plan was enacted. We're due. That's the bottom line. At the same time, very excited for the opportunities that it might create. I do think, and part of it is the Gunnison Public Lands Initiative, and maybe that's another question for the future, but I do think there are things that are rolling here in the Gunnison Valley that are going to be amazing tools and techniques for future protections and preservations of the stuff that we love the most. And again, I constantly am referring to public lands and our open space and our backyard up here, but that's exactly what it is. It's an opportunity, I feel, to create preservations that are lasting into the future and at the same time enabling the correct, proper, and adequate uses for certain areas. And as a mountain bike organization, we're a little bit unique in a certain sense that we are, in this case, promoting for wilderness, especially in today's current politics or polemics, if you will. There's the Sustainable Trails Coalition that's out there promoting bikes in wilderness, and there's a lot of people that have already come to us been like, hey, why aren't you guys doing this? Why aren't you guys jumping on board with that? And we do feel that, again, it's not just about collaboration, but there's partnerships, there's understanding of other missions. And I think that's a big part of what we're excited about in this forest plan process, is that through this public lands initiative in the Gunnison County area, that we're working with other user groups to understand the best possible protections and the future of our national forest, the GMOD, specifically the Gunnison National Forest. And I'll be honest that we at Simba are very excited about the forest plan, and we're still obviously in the planning stages, and now it's scoping, but I hope for a very positive outcome from it.
So as far as the Simba membership, what should they be kind of doing and looking for when it comes to the process?
It's a great question. A lot of folks have actually asked, like, hey, I don't have to comment because Simba is, and I give my money and support Simba, so I want you guys to comment for me. And that's awesome because we do represent, we're a voice for a collective, if you will. And at the same time, it is amazing to see individuals get on board and comment on their own because it does say a lot. And if those individuals also get on board and comment, along with a proposal like Simba's, or again, the participation or collaboration of the Gunnison Public Lands Initiative, it's even more, I think, energy and inertia for those causes.
Yeah, for sure. So you kind of touched on a bunch of this, actually, but we'll try to wrap it into one. For me personally, and for a lot of mountain bikers, I think what happened with Boulder White Clouds in Idaho was kind of
it was a shame.
It was a shame, and basically mountain bikers have felt like they kind of got thrown under the rug, and they did. I'm going to go ahead and say that. They did. And we luckily haven't had that here. So as you just said, you're trying to be collaborative, and I think you've largely succeeded in that. But and that might be why your stances with Sustainable Trails Coalition and IMBA, International Mountain Bike Association. But I guess wrap that into GPLI and what you feel like the Gunnison Public Lands Initiative can do, and how biking and other things can all be protected all at the same time. Hopefully, in theory.
Sure, and I think it's a lot of give and take, which is right. One of the lessons you're told is 4 years old when you first taught. Again, the pen's mightier than the sword, and working together gets you more. But I think that's exactly what it is. And there's I'm not going to lie, there's some fear involved in the sense of we've never done anything like this before. The Public Lands Initiative is unique in the sense that there have been other things like this done before, but the outcomes are always different, and again, it takes a lot of local individuals coming together for years for something to go to Washington, D.C., which is scary also for these other people to also then be voting or governing upon something that they're not necessarily intact with. So there's some fear involved with it all, and at the same time, there's a lot of hope involved that we can do something as great and as massive as this, that we can all come together and realize a little give and take. And I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Everybody's got a right to be out there. These are public lands, and there are certain uses that are right for certain areas, and there are certain uses that are wrong for certain areas. And I think it's great that we're finally catching up in the forest plan to be able to come out with these opportunities to look at maps, to comment on these areas, and look at the best possible protections. I can say, living in Crested Butte and speaking for, I would say for a lot of this community, that we are all about preserving and protecting our public lands, and we don't want mining, and we don't want big corporate interests to come here and outweigh what we cherish, which is, again, serene, pristine, amazing natural settings. So it's interesting to me that there might be some headbutting with some of these groups, and at the same time, we're all kind of after the same thing, and that is the utmost protection of our most precious of assets, but making sure that it's sustained throughout the future, that we're not going to have, our children are not going to have dirty water. They're not going to have, heavy metals in their water, and that stuff that they've got to deal with for future generations from one generation's desire to just capitalize on something that is, again, I don't think in the benefit or best interest of our future and or our community or the Gunnison National Forest or GMOD.
Yeah. Well, and that's the hard part. I think most everybody here probably is not into mining. Well, I mean, some people are into mining, but for the most part, that kind of is the starting level. But then it's, our side-by-side razor's okay, and it just goes down the line with dirt bikes, snowmobiles, to, hey, only hiking should be allowed, or even there's probably a few who think that certain areas should just be off limits to humans at all. And that's hard to decide what's honestly right.
Mm-hmm. Some people say, wilderness, the land of no uses, right? And the Forest Service slogan is the land of many uses. And I do feel that it's an interesting subject, but I do feel that, speaking specifically for mountain bikers, I think that mountain biking does create true, unique connections to our environment. And it's amazing to see that, this might be argued, I would say it's not argued. Mountain bikers are probably, the biggest stewards of our public lands throughout the country. Mountain bike user groups and mountain bike clubs represent huge volunteer hours on national forests and public lands every year. And I don't think that people who muscle-powered, human-powered, use our public lands in that fashion have any malice in their blood. I don't think there's any negativity to people wanting to recreate or to go and explore special places.
Yeah.
It's a unique thing, and it's amazing on a bicycle because it is muscle power. And again, the e-bike's a whole other story. But that aside, again, I would say mountain bikers have more in common with conservation groups across the country than any other user group. And it's a little bit difficult for me to see some of the factions, if you will, between groups like STC, IMBA, and again, wilderness versus bikes, etc., when these people have more in common than not.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a weird position. It's in between dirt bikes and hikers for some reason, even though there's a lot of common ground, honestly, when you really get down to it.
Indeed.
All right, well, let's try to start wrapping this up, and we'll change the subject a little bit. So Crested Butte is home for you. So why Crested Butte? Why haven't you moved on? Why do you still choose to call this your home?
It's I said it earlier a bunch. Yeah. It's community. It's strictly community. It's amazing. And again, coming from the East Coast, and I hardly mean to bag on the East Coast in any kind of a bad way, but showing up here for my first time when I drove down that hill and came into this community, and coming from the East Coast where I was, where people were ready to steal whatever they can off your back, to people who are ready to put a blanket on your back, was a stark contrast for me. That was it was a unique thing, and I've never been in a place where there was more like-mindedness and more just togetherness.
Yeah.
And I still haven't found it. I mean, my wife and I love to travel. We don't get out that much. We could get out a lot more, and I'm sure everybody could. But no matter where we go, and we do primarily kind of travel in the West, we used to get to Europe and go visit fancier and fun places, but that doesn't happen anymore. We have kids. All that being said, every time we drive back into this valley, and we come back down Highway 135 and drop down into town, and we see our little house because we live on the edge of town.
Yeah,
it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
There's no place like Crested Butte on the planet, and we hope it maintains that soul and that way of life, because it's a unique place, and at the same time, it's not an easy place, as you know.
No.
I mean, winters here are hard. Maybe not this past one.
That was hard. That was a really hard winter.
That was actually pretty hard.
The skier, that was a hard winter. Anyway.
It was a hard winter. But I mean, we're all facing huge impacts out west in general. And again, this town has seemed to maintain its soul and maintain its just wherewithal. I mean, it's amazing to think about how quickly things are growing and changing. And good on Crested Butte, and to some extent, good extent to the crazy left-wing hippies that fight everything that happens around here, because it's exactly what keeps our soul and our character, and that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's everyone is so passionate here because we all do love it here, and that's where we're at. Is there anything I should have asked that I forgot to ask you?
I'm sure I could think of a whole bunch of things maybe not right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, we didn't talk about fat biking at all. Maybe we can have you back, and we'll talk wintertime or something.
Giddy up.
Who else should I interview?
Who have you interviewed so far?
Oh, only a handful of people. Just give me some names. I bet I haven't interviewed them yet.
Gotcha. It's so funny. My brain did today. Monday. It's a rough week. I actually got a lot of riding in this weekend, which is amazing. I got to think about it, dude. I'll send you a bunch of ideas.
Okay.
There really are tons of good people, you know.
You've mentioned ranchers. Which someone did mention I should interview a rancher. So who? You
should. Bruce Allen.
Bruce Allen.
Hands down, Bruce Allen.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll call it Bruce Allen, but yeah, send me some other names too.
Yep. Bruce has been kind of the voice of the ranch community and the Stock Growers Association is what they say.
Okay.
He's awesome. And again, it's somebody I think that's actually looking to the future, not necessarily harboring on the past of you guys have ruined our lives.
Right.
It's more, hey, recreation's not going away.
Right.
How do we deal with this?
Right.
So again, I think it's a good positive approach, which is awesome. It's good to hear that,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming in and chatting.
Thank you for
having a beer with me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.